Hi everybody, it's Mo from Mo Goes, and I'm back with part 2 from my cruise on Royal Caribbean, Adventure of the Seas. I ended the last video at our second port of call, which was in Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic, so we'll pick up from there. For part 2, I'll be focusing on our last two ports of call, St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, and St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. We woke up Tuesday morning to warm, humid air, rock formations in the middle of the ocean, and beautiful mountainous terrain in the distance. We made our approach to the cruise port in Charlotte-Amalie, the capital city of St. Thomas, by about 8:30 in the morning. I was so happy that our room was starboard side because this was our view even after we docked. Straight out of a postcard, right? Once we debarked, we immediately found our tour guide, Michelle, who gathered everyone in our group together to prepare for our historic tour of Charlotte-Amalie. Sadly, this cruise port doesn't hold water to the last two, so not much to say here. One thing that I need to mention is that this particular historical tour was not our original choice. The original tour that we had booked was canceled at the last minute, so that forced us to have to pick another one, and there was only one other option for a historical tour, which was this one. So I think I needed to make note of that to be fair once I critique. From the video, you can tell that we were in an open air bus, but we didn't get an actual tour of the island. We just got transported from point A to point B and led out to meet another tour guide who actually took us on a walking tour. We learned about the St. Thomas version of the Liberty Bell and this building, which is the U.S. Post Office, and these two really historical murals that are found on the inside. We got to walk the streets, do a little shopping in the touristy areas, and then eventually we met up with the second tour guide at another really important historical site in the city. I can't remember our guide's name, but he's from Philly and he was absolutely awesome.
But these trees are one of the main indications of why we were one of the most important places in the world for a very long period of time. This is mahogany trees. The whole island was mahogany and lignum vitae trees. Lignum vitae or vitae is nicknamed ironwood because it doesn't burn. So the two best trees for ship repair were all on this island. But really picture the forests. We have dated our Amerindian population back to between 3,500 to 5,000 BC. We now know they would have been traveling in canoes that could fit 80 to 90 people, built out of one log of wood. So think of what the forest here would have looked like. They would have been so massive, they would have changed the biome to being more rain. Right now, you guys are standing in a tropical savanna. That means for half of the year, this is the Nevada desert. Not a drop of rain, nothing but cacti and whistling coyotes. They don't exist out here, I made that part up. But 6 months out of the year after that, nothing but rain. Our hurricane season, non-stop. We love hurricanes here. I will pray for a Cat 5 every night. You guys tricked into thinking we care out here is a trick to get you to buy real estate. No joke. I'll tell you about it later.
Next, we got to tour this old historic building, Fort Christian. This building is considered a National Historic Landmark, and it was established as such in 1977. Back when it was first built, and those dates are questionable, it's said that it was built anywhere between 1672 and 1680, and this was during the first successful colonial establishment on the island. Just like most forts, this one was also used by the military as a point of defense, and through the centuries, it also was used as a headquarters for the government, a church, and even a jail. Down in the dungeon, we saw lots of historic artifacts, and there was a lot of art on the wall depicting the people of that era, like some of the enslaved and some of the colonial figureheads of that time. It's funny that no one had an explanation as to why the hallways and ceilings were so short.
In Denmark, women had the right to vote because, again, Denmark doesn't care about your skin color, your race, your religion, or your gender. It's about money. So when America went to purchase these islands, Denmark didn't make it easy. They said number one, 25 million. Not in coin, not in cash, solid gold bullion. Second rule, everybody's going to be a citizen. Third rule, even women will get the right to vote.
Up on the rooftop, we were able to take in these gorgeous 360-degree views. I mean, look at the mountains and the water. So beautiful. Can you imagine having a view like this in your backyard? I'd be out there every day. Just a couple of blocks away was our next stop, Cardo Jewelers. In addition to fine jewelry, Cardo is also known for wine and spirits. We were led to the very back of the store and entered into what was like a mini museum of rum making. Further back and around the corner, we entered an area with a very long bar and individual stations set up for rum tasting. We got to taste pure sugarcane extract, which comes from the sugarcane plant, and that was one of the things used back then to make rum. They also used bay rum tree leaves, which smells very spicy and nutmeggy. Okay, now for the rums. The first one we tried was the white rum. This one was terrible. It was dry, sharp, not sweet, 4 out of 10. I had to wash it down with water. Second was the coconut rum. This one was very pleasant. It was mild, it was sweet, it wasn't too alcoholic, 10 out of 10. Second was the guava rum. This one, again, delicious, 10 out of 10, good flavor, sweet. I love this one. Next was the old rum. This one has a little color to it, but believe me, it was bad. I don't even know what this tastes like. It was just bad. 1 out of 10, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, we tried the navy rum, and I'm glad we saved this for last. It literally smelled like cough syrup, but it was way worse than cough syrup, and honestly, I think this is a close second to Beverly. Terrible, 0 out of 10. I can't speak for anybody else, but there were 2 clear winners and 3 clear losers. I just can't figure out which of the 3 were the worst. I don't necessarily recommend this particular tour only because of the bus transport part, but the walking tour was awesome. The Cardo rum tasting was wonderful and so much fun. Those I highly recommend. If you're on a Royal Caribbean cruise and you decide to buy some rum, keep in mind that you will not be able to bring it back to your room. You'll have to get it checked in once you board the ship again, and they give it back to you at the end of the cruise. The rum tasting concluded the tour, so we were driven back to the cruise port. Early the next morning, we arrived at our 4th and final port of call, Frederiksted, St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. St. Croix was completely different from the last 3 ports of call in that there was no physical structure for the cruise port, no shops, no restrooms, no amenities, nothing like that. Our group boarded a bus where we were driven from one end of the island to the other. We started off in Frederiksted and we drove to Christiansted, which is where our tour guide would meet us. This wasn't a short trip. This was actually about a 45-minute trip. It should have taken about 33 minutes, but it didn't because a lot of construction and detours were set in place. So it took us a little longer than it typically would to get to Christiansted. Our tour guide met us at the bus, and she had some handy dandy little pocket maps for those of us who wanted one. I do suggest you pick one up if you ever visit. It'll come in handy. One thing I immediately noticed was that there weren't very many people around. It wasn't a very busy tourist center like Nassau or some other really more populated islands are. We started the tour in this building, which contained an old way station.
As you can see, I want you to look at the floor. This is all yellow brick. And if we could see the building underneath the plaster, you would see yellow brick also. This is what was carried by the ships when all the galleons would come here, because all these galleons would come here to St. Croix. St. Croix was the pearl of the Caribbean. So what do you think was the number one thing they traded or they sold from the island?
Sugar cane.
Excuse me?
Sugar cane.
No, you can't sell sugar cane because it will rot. Rum. Exactly, rum. What other products would you get? A byproduct of the sugar cane. It was rum, and what else? Anybody? Sugar, very good. And the other thing that I kind of mentioned to you? Coffee. Coffee was one, yes, but also wood, precious wood.
The Christiansted National Historic Site consists of 6 historic structures, including this one, Fort Christiansvaden. We learned that this fort was built on top of the remains of a fort previously built by the French, and this one was built in 1738. You'll find lots of old artillery just lying around the property, and believe it or not, none of this artillery was ever used. But we did learn that one cannon was fired from this fort, but it wasn't in war, it was only a celebratory firing. I'm a sucker for architecture, and I think I spent a little bit too much time in this area right here. Look at the arched doorways, the decorative ceiling. Oh, I couldn't get enough of it. Just like Fort Christian and St. Thomas, Fort Christiansvaden was a multi-use facility over the years. Believe it or not, up to 20 prisoners were forced into this tiny cell. Can you believe that? Shocking. Walking up and down these corridors, you couldn't help but to imagine what things must have been like back in that era. I made my way up to the rooftop, and of course, the views did not disappoint. I found an entire row of cannons propped and ready to go, pointing to the sea, ready for fire. Another interesting fact about this site that we learned is that when it was used as a jail, there was a pretty notable inmate housed here, and her name was Rachel Fawcett. She was the mother of Alexander Hamilton, and she was housed here for several months in a small 10 by 13 foot cell. After touring the National Historic Site, we made our way into town on foot to see some other historic landmarks in the area. In addition to all the arched doorways that were prevalent in many of the buildings throughout the city, I noticed that a lot of the sidewalks were built within the perimeter of the building, and that was on purpose to protect pedestrians from the heat of the blazing sun. At this point, the guided portion of our tour was done, and our tour guide left us to roam the city freely for about another hour or so. With all this great architecture and lush vegetation, you know I got some awesome content. We made our way to the Christiansted Boardwalk, which overlooks the Christiansted Harbor. At the easternmost end of the boardwalk, we ran into the King Christian Hotel. I think this hotel is in the perfect location because it's really close to all the action at the boardwalk, but at the same time it overlooks the harbor, which is really serene and quiet. Finally, it was time for all of us to board the bus and head back to Frederiksted. The commute was relaxing and scenic, but it still took about the same amount of time it took to get here, about 45 minutes. It was lunchtime and we still had about 3.5 hours before we needed to get back to the cruise ship, so we Googled some local restaurants in the area and we found a really good one just 2 blocks away from the cruise port called Albus. Remember in the previous video I mentioned that if you want to find a really good place to eat in a Caribbean town, you want to go where the locals go? This is one of those places. The specialty here is Puerto Rican as well as local Crucian cuisine. In the front there was a bar, but in the back was set up for a typical restaurant area with an indoor seating area as well as an outdoor seating area. It wasn't crowded at all, as you can see, but I think it was mostly because it was a Wednesday in the middle of the afternoon. We didn't order from the menu because we already knew exactly what we wanted. We got stewed chicken, rice and beans, and tostones. We cleaned our plates. If you're ever in Frederiksted, St. Croix, you definitely want to give Alba's Bar and Restaurant a try. After lunch, we made the short walk back to the cruise port area where we spent a little time shopping the local vendors. There were a few other historical landmarks in the area, including this, the Eliza James McBean Clock Tower, the Customs House, and the Freedom Statue. We had a full day, we had full bellies, and we were ready to head back to the ship to relax and regroup in preparation for 2 sea days in a row. St. Croix was definitely my favorite of the 4 ports of call this trip. I think it was the most laid back, the most carefree and relaxing. Would I recommend these ports of call? Definitely. Would I recommend doing historic tours at these ports of call? Absolutely. I actually think it's a must. And scheduling them through the cruise line is even better. I hope this video was both enjoyable and informative, and I hope you stay tuned for the next one because I'll be dedicating it to everything we ate on the cruise. Thanks so much for watching, and until the next one, see ya.